So I explained to him, you're not allowed to do these things. I tried very much, but they're not religious till today. So I wasn't matzliach. And they went there. And after a few sessions, they brought me the Ksav Yad, the original manuscript, with 12 letters from the son, and they wanted I should agree that they should publish it as a book. So I worked with them hours. They shouldn't publish it because if this goes into the street, so a lot of people will start looking for this guy. But it didn't help. They published this book, and you can buy it in any bookstore till today. It's called Letters from a Son. That's the name of the book. But this manuscript was in my house a whole night. And here you see what the Chachomim tell us. It's unbelievable. Rashi explains this here in Vayikra, that the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Bilam types is Moshe sees things clearly, and Bilam doesn't see clearly. He sees, but not as clear as Moshe. Not as clear as Moshe. That's the difference between an emes Novi and a Novi who has powers, but he's not from Kedusha, doesn't have powers from Kedusha. Why am I saying this? In one of the letters, the boy describes Kabbalat Shabbat in heaven. It's very interesting. Lochodoid is singing, everything. And there you have the best proof that this guy was a man with koiches and honest, because he says names there of the family that came to the Kabbalat Shabbat. This guy, he can't even pronounce his words. He says, the boy writes, the Bobas Lata Bela came to Kabbalat Shabbat. Or Basha Chana, names that a goy can't pronounce in Purim. But there was one little mistake in the Chodoidi. In the Chodoidi, there was one little mistake. I don't remember what the mistake was, but that shows you the chiluk between Bilam and Moshe. The chiluk between Bilam and Moshe. Oh, this is an all-nagdoma to the main story, what I want to bring out with the Rebbe here. So, when over 30 years ago, when we built our first shul, how do we go about building the shul? We had a rented house on a small street. And I said to Balabatim, let's look for a small street. It's a very good neighborhood there, very good. It's more expensive. Okay, it's very expensive there. It's a very good neighborhood. Why a small street? Because I said, a small street someday, maybe we can change it to a Chabad street. It's not my fault. Go ahead. The eggplant will come out also. That's better. Okay. And Taika the Rebbe helped that we became friends with the only Jew in government and a councilman, and he brought the Goyish mayor to a shir of mine on Ahavas Yisrael. He was very impressed, and he asked that after the shir, the mayor asked, "What do you want?" And of course, when the mayor announces he's come to the shir, you have to be ready. So you prepare yourself before the shir with the answer. I said, I want you to change the name to Rehov Chabad. And he changed it within 8 days. Well, that's a different, that's Agav. Not only, later through another mayor, we changed the name of the square where the city hall is located. It's called Ashgocha Protis. And the square of the main bus station is called Mashiach Now. On every corner there's a sign Mashiach Now. And I demanded there's a little Baruch Hashem on every sign. That's Tam Mashiach Now. A little tiny Baruch Hashem which the government pays for. Okay. And they paint it over every 2 years. Okay. All right. So what I want to tell you, so we had a rented house there on this street, little street. And a rich Jew came there Shabbos afternoon to daven with us. In those days, we had no balabatim. We only had boys and girls because we weren't known yet. So it was full of boys and girls, maybe 200, 300 every Shabbos afternoon. They used to come there, sit outside. Okay, there was no room anymore. So he came in, and after Avdol, he says, I'm very impressed. I said, by what? By my speech or by the food? He said, no. When everybody washed the Shalosh Shudas, everybody had a little white clean towel. Everybody had a clean towel. You threw into a basket. One person per towel. I never knew that religious Jews are clean. This is an important thing to know. There are boys here, Bokrim, they're going to Shlichas someday. You have to be very clean. So he says, that would impress me from the whole afternoon. What do you want? What can I do for you? So I said, there's a house for sale across the street. So we crossed over the street, and he bought the house for cash Monday morning. And that's the way we started. Then we bought other houses around, and okay. When we bought this house, we didn't have any money for a secretary. So we have a house that takes up a third of a piece of land, and the other 2/3 you have to build. But we don't have any money for a secretary. How can we build on there? 3 weeks go by. I'll make a long story a little short. It's getting late. A woman shows up in my life, and this woman, she was born in Rakeshik. Reb Shmuel Levitin was born there. For the older Chassidim know probably the name Reb Shmuel Levitin. And she had a problem with her son and her daughter and her husband, health problems. And on the way out, in the elevator, she says to me, "Rabbi, I thank you very much for your help. By the way, I want to tell you, I once made a neder in my life to build a shul." Oh, I said, it's very interesting. But you have to keep a word. Making a neder is very serious. I didn't say anything else. This went on for 3 weeks. And at the end, she built a shul and the mikveh, everything herself. Since then, we've already built 15 more mikvahs, a total of 16 meanwhile, in different places. Okay. The day the guy finished building the shul and the mikveh, he fell off a horse and he hit his head on a rock and he went into a coma, this Jew. For 61 days he was in a coma. He wasn't religious, but one thing he did, he put on tefillin every day and he used to say Shema Yisrael. Every day I used to go to the Jewish hospital, take him by his hand, and in the coma I used to say Shema Yisrael with him, and Friday I used to say Shabbat Shalom. After 61 days, it was a Friday, I said Shabbat Shalom. He opened his eyes and said Shabbat Shalom. He lived 8 years afterwards. Not perfect, but 90% he was okay. 2 weeks before this Friday that he said Shabbat Shalom, the situation was very, very bad. It was so bad that they were already planning the funeral. So I arrived in the hospital. They were sitting there with all the details. What suit is he going to wear? All kind of stupid stories. So I said, "Listen, Rabbi," I gave a clap on the table. I said, "Don't you understand that God Almighty has much more to lose than you have if this man dies? Because what are people to say in the street? A guy built a shul, he built a mikveh, the next day he falls off a horse and he dies. I mean, God has much more to lose than the family. So logically, he will not die." So they stopped talking about the funeral, and 2 weeks later he woke up and he lived another 8 years. But I knew that this was a very serious. That day I spoke to the doctor. That Friday was something. In those days, to make a phone call to New York, to anybody, and to the Rebbe, would take hours. Brazil was a very undeveloped country then. So you had to wait hours to get a line to New York. I called up the Rebbe. I went home and I called up twice even. Okay. Before I left the hospital, I called over the woman. Her name was Miriam. By the way, she died, and afterwards also, and the only one left was her daughter. And her daughter became frum, and 3 weeks ago we made a tenoim of her daughter, the only daughter, the Einukel of the woman who built the shul, with her frum young man with the beard. In our shul we made the party, the engagement party of Shabbos night. Okay. So I said to her, "Miriam, I know you have a friend in the north." What do I mean in the north? In Brazil in those days, everybody who had money had their private kishef macher, the private sorcerer. They asked for broches and advice. But like I told you before, not all of them are honest. Not all of them are true, but many of them are honest, especially those who don't take money. So I said to her, "Listen here, I know you have your friend Susanna." Her name was Susanna in the north. I know you talked to her. But you should know that I'm going to home now. I'm going to call up the Rebbe. And if you call Susanna, it's going to be a short circuit. Susanna won't work, and the Rebbe won't work. It's going to be, one will cancel out the other. What else can I tell her? Nothing will work. She says, "I promise you, Rabbi, I'm not going to call Susanna." Okay, I went home. I called the Rebbe twice. Motzei Shabbos, I finished Havdalah. She walked in like her Kedar Kobakoidish. She never knocked. She opened the door and walked in like, humble, very humble person. She opened the door and she walked in and she was totally white. So I was sure that the guy must have died Shabbos.